All right. Good morning. How are we this morning? Can you guys hear okay? Mic check. Good? Okay. Ooh, y'all quiet this morning. Should I have enough coffee? Oh, y'all drinking coffee now. Okay, good. All right, we're going to pick up where we left off last week, talking about the parable of the sower. But our focus is primarily on the soils. That is in Matthew 13. There's actually a parallel in Luke 8, but I just decided to stick with Matthew 13. I won't ask you any hard questions just yet. We'll get to that in a moment. Let me just review for you a couple of things to remind you that I think were important for us to focus on and consider as we went through this parable, as it unfolded. Just a few things here. I don't want to make it more complicated. One of the dangers I think we have is when it comes to the parables is we look at every little thing in the parable and create a symbol out of it and we end up overdoing it. So we want to be careful with that. But this is a pretty long parable, and we got the benefit of Jesus actually interpreting it for us, telling us what it means, right? So a couple things here. Remember, verse 19 tells us that the seed is what? I told you I wasn't going to ask you hard questions yet. The seed is the word, sorry. And the soil, or the ground upon which the seed fell, represents the heart, right? And there's this picture of when the seed falls on the ground, and the Greek word is the idea of putting things together, right? You're comprehending, understanding, moments of clarity. And I don't approach this parable as from a fatalistic perspective, okay? We got to be careful when we read this stuff. We end up missing it, I think, if we're not careful. I believe the parable describes the process that our hearts go through, and maybe even why we respond the way we do when it comes to hearing truth. When I say truth, I'm talking about that which lines up with reality. We're talking about God, His heart, His design, His will, His truth, right? And this can describe us at any given moment, at any given time, as to why we respond to things the way we do. It will explain why some things are easier for us to put together and say, okay, yes, and it really takes off, it takes root, and it begins to produce fruit in our lives, and why sometimes other things don't have the same effect, okay? And again, I don't approach this from a fatalistic perspective because Jesus doesn't say that the soil can't change. In fact, what you'll notice is something that Luke says, and what's interesting about looking at this parable in a context where you look at what the writer is, the picture the writer is painting. So you look at what he talks about prior to and then even after and where it fits in this larger narrative. Luke makes the point that the truth is not something that is hidden under a basket, right? But it's intended as a light in a house to give light to all, right? And I think that placement there really helps us understand some things about how we're to understand this parable. We'll get to that here in a moment. So the types of the soils, when you have the path. You guys remember some of the things that we said about the path? I told you I'd wait. I waited. So the path, what are we talking about when it talks about the path? The path is hardened, right? What happens to the seed when it falls on the path? Just kind of lays there. And as a result, what happens to the seed? The birds come and eat it, right? It's almost like as if they're waiting for it. I mean, just picture this, right? They're waiting for it. Oh, there it goes, right? And that tells us a few things. One of those is that, why maybe the truth lands the way it does. Our hearts are hardened at times due to various things. And what makes our hearts hardened? Hardened by, the easiest answer is what? Life circumstances, things you go through, either by choices you've made or the choices other people have made. Remember we talked about Egypt and what Egypt represents the last class? We spent a couple of weeks with this. Sometimes, Egypt represents bondage and the things that oppress us, and sometimes we are affected though by other people's Egypts, right? The choices and decisions other people make, but life circumstances, and we get to this place where it could be, well, I don't think that I need help with that, or I don't think this applies to me, right? Or I'm not interested in what you have to say. Maybe it's not so much about what the truth is, but maybe about the person who is delivering the truth, right? You see that sometimes when kids try to, what's the word when kids pin their parents against one another? What is that called? Don't remember? I can't remember it. There's a word for it, but the kids know which parent to go to get the yes and get the no and do the right, that sort of thing. And one parent can say something and the kids don't hear it, and then the other parent comes in and says the same thing, and the kids, okay, right? So sometimes it just has to do with the source, where it's coming from. That was mentioned last week as well. But that's a good explanation to help us understand maybe why we respond and why we maybe see other people respond the way that they do. Is the path that is hardened, is it destined to be hardened forevermore? No, it's not. Another type of soil was the rocky ground, right? There's some soil there, but not much soil. And so the root system the roots do begin to grow, but they not enough to where it can sustain the life that is needed, right? And so in this example, the sun comes out and scorches it, and it's done, right? And so there is some soil and some roots. This is likened to those when we hear it and it sounds good. It's like, man, that sounds great. I would love that. And I liken it to, I like the idea. Man, I'm this way too sometimes with some things. I love the idea of it. But when it comes down to engaging with it, I'm not so sure I'm sold out on that process all the time, right? There's lots of circumstances where I find myself where I'm really like this. Okay, how can we do this? It'd be like wanting to get in shape. Wanting to eat healthy, right? Wanting to do, maybe, have better or a healthier emotional state of being. Love the idea of it. Not so sure I like it enough to engage the process that would create the fruit or the results of it, right? Like waking up, going to the gym, tracking your macros, watching what you eat, staying away from sugar, or whatever it is that you need to do. Or speaking to a counselor, talking things out, facing all of the stuff, right? That's what this is like. It's like, man, it sounds good. It's something that I want, but there's not enough soil there, right? And as a result, the seed doesn't really break through to the deepest levels that really are the patterns and behaviors that control our life that we may not even be able to articulate. And so the word doesn't get the roots down deep enough where it engages those things. And as long as things are going well, it looks great, right? But as soon as something happens where it creates a little pressure, a little tension, what's the results? You fall right back into what you've always done. That's what we do. right? Okay, so remember this. Growth happens when you're uncomfortable. I don't like that idea, but that's how it works. We grow when we're uncomfortable, right? And so let's just say that you've bought into this idea of change and of transformation, being more like Jesus and engaging in some of those things that help your heart become more aligned with God. And things are good as long as life is happening and it's good, but then all of a sudden something happens, tension, a trial, you lose your job, you get in a fight, whatever it is, right? That tension, that pressure, you start feeling that. And you're not equipped to deal with that, to address that. And because at this point, you just like the idea, the appearance of, yeah, I like this. This looks good. But then it's tested, right? It's pushed. And what do? When when life is comfortable and we get uncomfortable, what is our response? What do? When you're in the process of trying to change a habit and it has not quite sunk in yet, hasn't gone deep and grabbed a hold, you go right back. You fall back into what you're comfortable with. And we do that without even realizing because it's just so natural. It's the pathway that has been worn out for us by our habits and our ways of thinking and choices that we've made. And so that's what happens, right? And so rocky ground really represents that. Trials commonly fall back into normal habitual ways of navigating life. Okay? Does that mean that that's the way it's always going to be? No, it doesn't. In fact, here's the thing. I'm going to challenge you on how you think about this. I keep thinking there's somebody in the window there. Man, what in the world? Oftentimes, before something really begins to take root and sink in and fruit is produced, that is part of the process. It's like you take 2 steps forward, 1 step back. You guys familiar with that process, right? That's this process that we go through that oftentimes is a part of what's preparing the soil, okay? I know the way we look at these oftentimes is, no, you're either this, or this. Like, yeah, not so much, okay? This isn't fatalistic. Okay, all right. So, and then there's the thorns. This one's simple to me. The thorns are growing, and what happens? Yeah. I think the important thing to note is that the thorns know where the good soil is too, right? Like weeds know that's why you got to get, anybody here? I know there's a handful. Did you weed out your garden yet? Or are you just letting it be?
We have to weed it, but we also try to get soil that doesn't have much junk in it to start, so you don't have to do so much weeding.
Yeah.
But there's a lesson there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can surround yourself with the right people, and you're less inclined to revert back to
Yeah.
the junk things.
Yeah. So the weeds, they know where good soil is too, right? And they represent, our desires and wills at times, the things that we chase after. And I think this represents really just the fight, the battle that is there, okay, between God's heart and our hearts. Our formation is on full display. Our wills, our desires, the tension that is there at times when we want what's right and we understand, but then there are things at play here that at times we chase after. And, well, it produces fruit, doesn't it? And it can produce fruit to us in such a way that it will choke out, okay, the good seed, if you will. So, thorns, the word actually takes root, but it's crowded out by other cares and pursuits of things that we desire. And again, let's think about it. Does it stay that way? Does it mean it has to stay that way? I don't know, maybe I'm just a weird one, but man, this describes like my journey. It does. where, yeah, right, fruit was being produced, seed was sown, fruit was produced at various seasons of life for whatever reason. There are things that I would pursue after and, would kind of choke out truth, word, freedom, what was helpful. Seasons where, you're not under bondage and all of a sudden you are. Right? It's like sometimes you just wake up like, how did I get here? How did this happen? Like, what's going on here? Anybody? Does that resonate with anybody? Like, right? That's what this is talking about, okay? That's what this is talking about. And so, at the very least, have a little compassion on yourself and other people, understanding that there's some soil there, and it's in the condition that it's in for a reason, but it doesn't mean that it stays that way. It is helpful, though, to help us understand what's happening and maybe even how to address that, right? Go ahead. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, just think about it. If you got a garden, and we had a flower bed. Oh, I don't know what it is. We moved into the house, and it was there. And all of a sudden, these things started to grow. And I'm looking at it from a distance, and I'm like, I ain't touching that. I don't want to mess with that. Like, I don't know if gloves would help. Like, it's, you know what I'm saying? It's like, I don't know if I want to get into that. And so you just kind of like, right? Just by its very appearance, not wanting to deal with it, not wanting to address it, right? So, all right, so there's your three soils, but then there's the final soil, which is the soil that we would hope that we all were, maybe sometimes assume we are. I would say it's definitely the goal, and it's definitely a possibility, and it's definitely the ultimate end. I mean, this is where you're wanting to be, right? And that's the good soil. Right? The good soil. What happens to the seed that falls on the good soil? I mean, you ain't even got to read the parable to know the answer to that one. What happens to the seed that falls on good soil? Come on, man. Right? It thrives. It flourishes. Why? It's good soil, right? It's good soil. Like, it's very simple. It's good soil. So let's apply this to the heart. Look at Matthew 13, verse 23. But as for the seed sown on good soil, this is the person who hears the word and understands. Remember that word understand is the idea of putting two things together, putting things together. Are you always able to put it together immediately? No. Sometimes it takes a little bit, doesn't it? What I'm trying to help you understand is that this parable really is describing a process. Okay, it's a journey. Okay. He bears fruit, yielding 160 or 30 times what was sown. And what's interesting about this is when you look at the parallel account in Luke 18:15, it says, excuse me, this way. These are the ones that after hearing the word, cling to it with an honest and good heart. So what's going on here? Seeds planted, it's good soil, it's producing, but apply it to the heart. What's happening? Okay, growing to be more like Jesus. Let's kind of break that down a little bit more. Go ahead. Okay. Okay. What does it take to cling? What does it take to persevere? It's the same thing it takes to understand. What's at play here? Starts with a W. Will. Yeah, well, it does take work, but will. What's the will? What's our wills? I mean, it is. When we talk about the will, what are we thinking about? What are we talking about? Yeah, it's what you want. It comes down to desire. It's the place where your choices reside, right? It's really literally the only place where what you want can happen. The only place that you have true power, right, is your will. It's what you desire. It's what you want. And it's what here's the thing, our lives are a bunch of actions, oftentimes, that are a result of us trying to have our wills be done, okay? So we're talking about hearing here, you're making connections, you're holding on to it, because that's your desire, your willingness to turn your mind towards it, right? To see the value in it, and to hold on to it, and acting in connection with it, in fact. Even when you don't understand it. What is that called? Faith, trust. That's exactly what faith is. It's trust, right? It's like, I don't see how this is going to work out, but okay, if you say so. Right? If you say so. Isn't that what we're asking our kids to do to us when we say, hey, you can't do that? Well, why? Sometimes the legitimate answer is, because I said so. Because they, for whatever reason, can't understand it. Maybe wouldn't understand it. Maybe you're opening up a can where they're just going to keep asking questions about why, and you know where it's going to go. And sometimes you're just asking them to trust you, right? Right? Okay? So in this, it's joining our wills with the Word. Remember, the seed is the word of the kingdom. The Word represents what? God's will. It's God's will, right? The word of the kingdom, God's will. So we're joining our wills with the Word. And what happens when we do that? It brings into reality what? Yeah. Brings into reality the kingdom of God, right? The kingdom of God is where God's will is done. You tracking? It's where God's will is done. Wherever God's will is done, the kingdom has come with power. There it is, okay? Which is why the invitation is what? Hey, when Jesus preached the gospel, what was the good news? Hey, change the way you're thinking. The kingdom is available to you now. Align your will with God's. Like, you can live in the kingdom. It's for you, okay? Okay, so how does that work? Well, when we align our wills with His will. I mean, that's the whole, repent, think about your thinking, change the way you're thinking about these things, right? How do we do that? What's the helpful source? The Word. The Word, right? Okay, enough hard questions, sorry. But got to get you to think about this, right? So what is making the soil good? Okay, so what is making our hearts good then? If our heart's the soil, what's making it? Belief, okay. Okay, and belief is the idea of entrusting. Faith is trust, belief is entrusting, right? What else? Okay. What else? Man, straight A student right there, right? We talked about that last week. Yeah, a heart that is willing to receive it. That's where it starts, right? And all the other, that's true. That's all a part of it. That's where it starts, right? It's a willingness to turn the mind to it, be receptive, right? It's a receptive will. Also takes humility, right? Takes a little humility. I want this. No, this is what I want. Yet not my will, your will. Right? Okay. So these are explanations, I think, of why we react the way we do to the Word when it reaches us where we are. And as I said, these describe us at any given moment on our journey, okay? In fact, I guarantee you can look back at your own life and your own journey and look at various seasons and times and where you were. And if you just simply ask why, where does my heart fit within this context here, right? It might help you better understand. maybe even understand what, where your heart may end up being inclined to be at times, okay? Any questions or comments about all of this so far?
I think your heart is always
Yeah.
in all honesty, I heard a preacher one time telling me, he's like, you need to practice being a good soil. For the word of God, yes, but we also need to be practicing to seek to understand every idea that comes your way.
Mm.
Sometimes you want to plant those seeds in good soil, and then take root.
Mm-hmm.
They become a core of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
There's sometimes you need to put those seeds in concrete, because they're not good ideas, they're not good for you.
Yeah.
But you need your heart right when those good ideas come.
Mm-hmm.
And take root, be strong, and endure.
Okay. Yeah. That's good. That's good.
Things happen in the day, and trials come, and you're bombarded, and, you might wake up feeling great, and then you head out to work, and you get in a wreck. And that just throws your whole day off. And how you respond to people throughout that day determines the rest of the day and how they feel about their day. And so as you're going on throughout the day, it's, things are coming at you, and, just a little gut check, like, where am I? In this context, my heart, what kind of soil is my heart? When so-and-so said this to me, and I responded that way, where was I in that moment?
Mm.
I think, it's a process, and it's like a yearly process, and, a journey, but it's also like a daily, hourly process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Go ahead.
So I was sharing with you my big tomato plant bushes that are not producing as much fruit as I'd like. But in relationship to these thorns, now I have morning glories growing with my tomatoes. We planted these before and got them around the yard. And they're just vines, right? They just grow up.
Yeah.
And they're beautiful. The flowers in the morning, I just, coffee and some morning glories, perfect. And they're choking out my tomatoes. And I don't want to pull them out. Because and I love seeing them. And I love walking out in the morning and being with these morning glories. And I haven't uprooted a single one. And I just wonder in my own life how many morning glories are growing, choking things
Yeah.
out that I want to wake up in the morning and see those things.
Yeah. That's good.
Tomatoes, there you go. That's probably been a few times I've done that too.
Okay. So, again, Jesus didn't say that the heart never changes, did he? Listen. We just go home if that's the reality. Right? Jesus didn't say that the heart never changes. And so I think there's a good reason to have hope here. Because what a person could hear at one point that they're not receptive to, there's another moment where all of a sudden they might be, and they are, right? That's an indication of how things change, okay? And again, I love this, in Luke's telling of this parable, I don't read this parable fatalistically. I keep saying that, right? Like nothing can be done, or that's the end of the story, because it's not. Luke 8:16, when Luke writes this parable, and then this is what he gives. This is what he says. No one lights a lamp and covers it over with a container. You know the rest of the story. No one lights a lamp, right? Jesus says what? You are light, right? What does light do? It lights. Gives light to all in the room. It's not meant. Okay, so you got to think about this. God does not intend to cover up the word of the kingdom, does he? Just because you weren't receptive to it at that moment, does that mean you'll never hear that again, or seed will never be thrown out again? Or you get what I'm saying? Does that mean that you're done? Does that mean that it's done? No, it doesn't, right? And just as his word transforms lives, right, we play a role in that as light, right? And so does that, I mean, have you ever spoke to someone and they just just weren't hearing it, didn't get it, just wasn't clicking, and then you had another conversation with them, not really clicking, maybe a little bit, have another conversation, like over time, eventually it's like, they start making connections and they get it, right? Okay, I think that's the point here. God's still at work. We still have an impact as well, right? And all that is happening on the hearts of other people and on ourselves. Okay, are you tracking? Like, is that making sense? Okay. So since it is the case that at any given moment, this parable is describing our hearts, right? Our heart's response to the Lord. What is the heart? What is the heart? And how are we to understand Scripture's reference to the heart? Okay, your soul. Is that what you said? Okay. Anybody else? When you think about the heart, what comes to your mind? What are some words that you would use? Character. Okay. What you really are. I had a instructor who used to say, it's in the cool dawn in the morning when you're looking at the mirror and you're seeing beyond just the image, and you're looking at and you're sitting with who you really like, the you, who you really are, the one who makes the choices and decisions. When you're face to face with that person, right? It's the heart. Yeah. Anybody else? Okay, so here's what I want to do. Don't have a whole lot of time. I just want you to listen, okay? I want you to listen, and I want you to, let's practice the art of listening, okay? We hear a lot of things, don't we? We hear a lot of things. Let's actually listen. And pay attention to what grabs a hold to you. Pay attention to what just sticks, what lingers, okay? Don't try to necessarily remember everything that I'm going to say here. I'm going to go through some scripture. We're going to start with in the Old Testament Hebrew scripture. And I want to help you understand what they talked about in reference to the heart. And then we're going to use the New Testament as well. Just to show the similarities and maybe some distinctions, whatever, to help us wrap our minds around, okay, what are we talking about when it comes to the heart? Like, what does that mean? Is it a thing? Is it just, like, what's happening here? Okay? How's that sound? Good, okay. So, in the Hebrew mind, okay, they refer to the heart and from a lot of different ways and a lot of different perspectives. The first, I would say, was they saw it as the intellectual seat. Okay? So we have a tendency of separating the mind and the heart when we talk about it. And in fact, I do separate it. Just simply because of what we're thinking about, what comes to our mind when we talk about the mind. Okay? So it is helpful. But the Hebrews considered the heart the seat of thought, understanding, memory, and wisdom. They did not have a word for the brain. Okay? They did not have a word for the brain. And so mental activity was located in the heart. Okay? In the heart. Proverbs 2:10, wisdom will enter your heart and moral knowledge will be attractive to you. The Hebrew noun associated with mind and thoughts is the word heart here. Deuteronomy 29:4, the Lord has not given you an understanding mind. It's the same Hebrew word that is translated heart. Okay? Which represents the center of the inner life where the will and emotions join together and produce action. That's how they thought about it, okay? In fact, I recently read some comments about this where You may have heard this, that the heart to the Jewish mind was the seat of emotions. I read something that said actually it wasn't the heart, it's actually the kidneys. I don't know. However, and a lot of the things that I read, they did distinguish those things. And that's the Hebrew language is fascinating, okay? But notice what he says. Wisdom will enter your heart, and moral knowledge will be attractive to you. The word you there is the Hebrew word for soul. Okay, soul. So in this verse, right, the heart and the soul, they're meant to parallel one another. Okay? They're brought together like as if they're one. Why would that be the case? Why do you think that might be the case? The Hebrews looked at the soul as representing the totality of the person. And what's at the center of the soul? The heart. The heart. Okay? It was also seen as the moral and spiritual core. So we're talking about the center of moral choice, obedience, covenant faithfulness, so forth and so on. Deuteronomy 6:5, you must love the Lord your God with your whole mind or heart, your whole being. That's the Hebrew word for soul, which is interesting, right? And all of your strength. Jeremiah 31:33, I will put my law within them and write it on where? Their hearts. Okay, their hearts. It was seen as the decision-making center, so it's viewed as a source of deliberation and intentions and where all the plans are made, right? Proverbs 16:9, a person, this is interesting because this is the Hebrew word for heart and mind. And what you're going to notice throughout the Hebrew scriptures is that oftentimes these words are used interchangeably. And the context determines how the translators translate them, right? That would help us best make sense of what's going on there. So a person plans his course, but the Lord directs his steps. Right? It's the place where the deepest motives reside, is the point. Okay? It's the truest measure of a person. That's how they saw it, right? It's when we talk about the truest measure of a person, we're talking about integrity, right? We're talking about values. We're talking about how a person handles challenges, right? We're talking about their character. And that's what the Lord looks at, right? Right? That's what the Lord looks at. 1 Samuel 16:7, the Lord looks at what? The heart. Jeremiah 17:10, the Lord probes into people's minds and examines people's hearts, right? So the Hebrew, the heart is the center of the human life. It is all-encompassing when it comes to the intellect, when it comes to the will, when it comes to the conscience, and when it comes to emotion and so forth and so on. How would you summarize all of that? Anything stick out to you? I know it's a lot, but how would you summarize that? Go ahead.
I don't know if it's a summary, but every time I've purchased a motorcycle, I've always thought there's this logic and reason part of my decision that says, don't buy a motorcycle. And then I go and buy a motorcycle because my heart says, you want one.
Yeah.
And I think that, for me, one of the things this past week when I was listening to some lessons, they were talking about being fervent in prayer. And that idea of passion. I don't think it comes from up here. I think it's here. And so, yeah, it's just thoughts.
Yeah. Okay, good. Anybody else? Got 2 minutes. Make it quick.
The heart is kind of the controller. God wants our heart. He says, you honor me with your lips, but your heart is our country. But at the same time, he also says it's out of your heart some of these
Yeah. Yeah. So that means being in tune with it, right? You have to be attuned to your heart and what's going on there. And the very fact that we can do that, man, it's like being conscious of the fact that you're conscious. It's almost like stepping outside of yourself, right? It's pretty powerful stuff there. Yeah, anything else? What else? The heart. At least according to Hebrew Scripture, and you're going to see it's no different than in the New Testament. Maybe a few little different nuanced ways because it's a different language than the Greek and probably more akin to our English language than the Hebrew is for sure. Might get a few more words to help you understand some things. But I think the best way that I would probably summarize it is that the heart is at the center of who we are. It is the center of the inner life. And the external life is a reflection of what's going on the inside, right? We might say it's like the motherboard. It's the motherboard of who we are. So, any questions you want to ask about yourself, always go back to the heart. Go ahead.
I was also thinking that the heart is also like what drives you.
Mm-hmm.
If you have no heart, you're not going to want to help anybody. You're not going to want to be motivated to do
Sure.
anything. Like our passions
Mm-hmm.
come from the heart. Our desire to do things, to take action, all comes from the heart being active.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there's a lot of energy or direction that comes out of that.
Okay. Good.
Sometimes your heart is not in it, you do the things you know, and your heart follows.
Yeah.
You train a child.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, when he's older, his heart is going to be in it.
Yeah. That's an interesting point because what I think that brings up is two different things that are happening inside of the heart that feed off of each other and help each other grow there. We'll get into that. That's good. Go ahead. Yeah. It is the very ingredients, your makeup, right? It's at the core of who you are, your makeup, and why you do what you do, think the way you think. And it's circular. It can be spiral, like it's just everything feeds off of one another. We'll talk a little bit more about that next week. We'll go over some of the New Testament scriptures, which basically a lot of things you guys have mentioned here are referenced here. And then we're going to jump into understanding our total makeup, like where the heart plays within all of that, the mind and the body and the social context and how all this works out, okay? We're going somewhere with this, so just hang tight, okay?